Hello, and welcome to episode 26 of Sorastro's Star Wars Legion painting series. In this episode we're going to paint the new Wookiee warriors from Atomic Mass Games' Star Wars Legion. The expansion comes with a host of options, allowing the player to build units equipped either with X1 carbines or with blades and Kashyyyk pistols. Heavy weapon upgrades include the long gun and battle shield, and we also get to choose between a bowcaster Wookiee or Wookiee chieftain, pictured here in the middle. Assembly of the models is nice and straightforward, and as usual I primed the figures in black, followed with some zenithal highlights applied from above, which could be done with the airbrush or a rattle can. I've also chosen to provide a quick dry brush of pure white to help sharpen the texture. Next I'll be providing the base tones, where I'll be using the contrast colours to create some nice easy tonal variation for the fur, and I'll be taking a simple base colours and shade approach for the weapons and accessories to get them painted up quickly. We can then finish the Wookiees off with some final optional details and highlights, along with some basing. Let's jump in with the base colours. There are a couple of ways we can achieve some tonal variation for the fur using the contrast colours. One way is to simply wet blend two different tones on the miniature, as I'm doing here, using Skeleton Horde for the lighter areas and Gore-Grunta Fur to create some darker patches. I'm starting with the fur because there's a good chance I'll be hitting some of the weapons and accessories, which is fine at this stage. All I'm aiming to do is create some organic variations in the fur tone, rather than trying to reinforce the pattern of light and shade, which already shows through quite nicely. An alternative approach would be to colour the entire area with the lighter tone, as I'm doing here, once again using Skeleton Horde. And then paint the darker patches on afterwards, and for this Wookiee I'm using Wyldwood, and I might use a little contrast medium to help blend the edges. I've chosen to make all of these dreadlocks quite dark. For grey or black markings, we can use something like Basilicanum Grey or Black Templar respectively. And for this Wookiee chieftain, I initially explored using some Apothecary White and Skeleton Horde to create a more greyish look. I then added some darker markings using a mix of Wyldwood and Black Templar, thinned with a little medium. There's clearly no right or wrong here, as long as you remember the basic principle that we're working from light tones first, then adding the darker tones on top. With that done, I've now decided to apply Vallejo's brown earth basing paste as usual, along with a few cork rocks. After painting the rocks in grey, I'm now providing a light dry brush with something like Tyrant's Skull, followed with some green shade. I'm now just doing a little further darkening of some of the areas of fur. Moving on to the weapons and accessories, I'm now darkening some walnut with a little black, and I'm using this to paint all of the belts and ammo straps. I'm also using this for the recesses of the small sections of armour plating, and this is fine for the holsters too. I'm applying the paint a little more thinly for the small shield so that it collects more in the recesses. For the silver ammo clips, I'm mixing some speed metal with a little graphite. You could use pretty much any silver tone you like for this. I'm also using this for the ties on the dreadlocks, and if you want to take a simple approach with the blades, you could use it there as well. For some of the other metallic details, I'm mixing in some Elven Gold. I'm using the side of the brush here to pick out the raised design. For the different parts of the X1 carbine rifles, I'm using Elven Gold, Victorian Brass, and I'm starting with some Decayed Metal. This is now the Elven Gold. And I'm now using Victorian Brass. I'm using the same tones for the pistols too. I might also use some of these metallic tones for the handles of the blades. For most of the bowcaster, I'm using orange leather. And I'm using Elven Gold for the metal parts. For the upper section of the heavy shield, I'm returning to the Walnut. And for the lower end, as well as the back of the shield, I'm mixing in some black. I'm now using orange leather for the remaining segments, as well as a couple of the design elements near the top. I'm also using this for the rim. And I'm using a gold and silver mix for the remaining sections. For the long gun, I'm mainly using pure copper. Here I've chosen the somewhat pale Thar Brown to break things up a bit. And this is once again walnut mixed with just a little black. With the base colours complete apart from the blades, I'm now going to shade all of the weapons and accessories down with a mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil, along with a couple of drops of Lahmian medium. This does a nice job of darkening the recesses and dulling down the metalwork, creating a more tarnished finish. These Wookiees are now almost ready to hit the table, but first I'd like to add a few final finishing touches. The first thing I'd like to do is use some Petroleum Gray to paint the hands, noses, and maybe the claws on the feet. I'm now highlighting these areas with the addition of some white sands in a couple of stages. It's also possible, if slightly tricky, to suggest the whites of the eyes using an off-white, although these won't really be visible during gameplay. Here I'm just articulating the teeth, and I've chosen the pinkish Sandalwood to paint the lower lips. Next I'm highlighting the brown fabric, firstly with some pure walnut. And I'm now lightening this with some Arabic shadow and some Thar Brown in a couple of stages. Finally, I'm painting the blades a bit like I did with the previous Wookiees back in episode 13. I'm starting with a shadow tone made of black metal mixed with a little black, and I'll then be placing my highlights using the lighter heavy metal. Here I'm more or less following the pattern of Zenithal highlights, which already look quite effective. I'm now mixing an intermediate tone, and I'm using this to create a short transition between shadow and highlight. I might then glaze over a little Cobalt or Emerald Alchemy, especially in the midtones. And I'm now using speed metal mixed with titanium white to add some nice bright edge highlights. As usual, I like to use a nice matte black for the rim of the base. And to protect the figures, I've sprayed them off camera with some matte varnish. To finish the Wookiees off, I'm now sprinkling some fine turf over a layer of thinned PVA, as detailed in the earlier episodes. And I'm now gluing down some grass tufts and a few pieces of dried plants or moss. And this completes the Wookiee Warriors. Thank you for joining me, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. As usual, you'll find a full product list in the video description, along with all of the places I can be found online. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Star Wars Legion. Happy painting!